Hello and welcome. This is part of our ongoing video series, educational series that is sponsored by the Big Sandy Lake Association. My name is Jim Dame. I'm a board member. Today we're going to be speaking to one of the most beloved waterfowl creatures on our lake, the loon. We have two guest speakers. Jayden Jech is a loon specialist with the Minnesota DNR, and he'll be overviewing overall loon population, nesting patterns, migration, and how we can be good stewards of loons here on Big Sandy Lake. We'll also hear from my colleague and additional board member, Paula Andrzejewski. Paula is heading up an effort on the part of our association called Love Your Loons, and she'll be speaking to us also how we can be good stewards and take care of the lake, get your lead out, and other initiatives. If you're currently a Big Sandy Lake Association member, thank you for your membership. If you're not a member, I'd encourage you to become one. It's a very modest annual fee, and your dollars go a long way in doing a lot of good work to keep Big Sandy beautiful. We focus on aquatic invasive species, soil erosion, phosphorus control levels, and of course educational series like this one to help not only homeowners, cabin owners, but visitors on our Great Lake, Big Sandy. So without further delay, let's turn it over to Jayden.
Yeah, so I currently work on the Minnesota Loon Restoration Project and support other loon-related programs at the non-game wildlife program that's part of the DNR. And my day looks a little different every day. I'm primarily supporting the work of the Loon Restoration Project, which includes habitat acquisition, deployment of artificial nesting platforms, promoting loon-friendly lake stewardship, and monitoring loons as well. And I continue to support community science projects that have been happening with the non-game wildlife program for over 40 years. In Minnesota, we have the second highest population of loons in Minnesota, second to Alaska, but we have the most common loons in the lower 48. And it's because of Minnesota's wonderful 10,000 lakes. Loons rely on our clear waters, our lakes that support diverse fish populations, and ultimately that support great loon nesting habitat. And that can look a little different depending on where you're at in the state and the lake that you're on. So on larger lakes like Big Sandy here, they rely on these near shoreline areas a lot of the time. They will typically occupy territories in these near shore areas due to the valuable nesting habitat that's nearby. And so on larger lakes like this, these nearshore areas are extremely important in supporting loons. And it's also extremely important to be loon aware when you're in these nearshore areas. As loons may be looking for nesting locations, they may be currently on a nest, and boat wake could potentially flood or disturb a nesting loon. And they're typically rearing loon chicks near these nearshore areas. So they also really like islands. So they prefer natural nesting locations that are on islands because of the ability to deter some mammalian predators, and overhead coverage on islands can protect them from our avian predators as well that loons naturally have. Keeping a close eye out when boating in these areas, especially near shorelines through May through July, especially during these times, is extremely important to be loon aware and keep an eye out for loons in these near shore areas. In locations where we don't have natural locations to nest, such as areas that have developed shorelines, we do deploy and work on deploying artificial nesting platforms throughout the state. We place these in targeted locations to augment natural nesting and try to make the best loon nesting habitat possible in locations where there is extensive development. So in Minnesota, we have natural nesting as well as some augmented natural nesting with artificial nesting platforms, or ANPs is what we call them for short. Here in Minnesota, we recognize the loons by their brilliant colors, the bright black and white checkered pattern that they have, and a bright red eye here on Minnesota lakes. Towards the end of the fall, you might recognize them or see them a little bit differently. They almost lose entirely that pattern and they become a more dull gray color. And they keep this coloration as they migrate to the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. And while they're there, throughout the entire winter before they're getting ready to fly back to Minnesota. So when you're in maybe Florida or along the Gulf of Mexico, you might recognize them with a dull gray plumage. And they might look a little bit different than the birds that we're seeing here in Minnesota, but they are the same common loon and still one of Minnesota's state birds. Unlike other birds, loons have very dense bones, which allow them to reach extreme depths. So they're excellent divers. They spend almost all of their time on the water except for when they're nesting. Loons nest for approximately 28 days, or they incubate eggs for 28 days, and will almost immediately leave the nest with their 2 loon chicks, 1 to 2 loon chicks depending on the year. Once they're on the lake, they face several predators. The loon chicks might be, their predators might be snapping turtles or larger fish. There's also avian predators such as eagles as well. So there's a number of challenges that loons face out on the water, but they're especially adept with dense bones and the ability to dive at extreme depths and very quickly underwater. So loons also are great flyers. They can fly at speeds of faster than 70 miles per hour, which is faster than we're able to drive in Minnesota. So it's really cool to see all of the unique things that loons have specially adapted to when they're here on Minnesota lakes, but also migrating and spending their time at the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean where they winter.
I was raised as a bird watcher, which was kind of a reluctant hobby with my parents, and then as I got older, it really became a passion. Loons are the iconic symbol of lake life. You know, you see the black and white stark plumage of the breeding loons, and then they instantly disappear with the big dive. So we look for those fluffy little babies riding on the back and then off being independent, and it just makes us really connect with being at the lake and cabin life. But Big Sandy's a big lake and big boats and a lot of traffic. I'm a kayaker and a paddleboarder, and I'm always dodging the wake of boats, and I think about the loons. You know, what's happening to the nests? You know, are they being waves washing away eggs or disrupting the materials as they're building nests? How can we encourage citizens here to love their lake and enjoy lake life and protect those birds to stay around? Knowing about loons, understanding about them, you could casually be a loon watcher, which simply entails making notes of observations you see, and then at the end of the season, you just submit that set of notes to the DNR Loon Watch. That's a very simple way to get involved. And also the liaison for the Get the Lead Out, which people might not know that about 25% of loon deaths are from lead poisoning. So lead is a toxic thing that is in old fishing tackle. Loons can ingest lead by eating fish that have lead in them, by grabbing onto somebody's line with the bait and ingesting it, and even off the bottom of the lake. Loons and other birds, swans, eat little pebbles to help their digestion, and so they'll eat the lead, and then it's a very slow and painful death of lead poisoning. So as a liaison for the Get the Lead Out, we have provided collection places and samples of lead-free tackle. If people would find old lead tackle, they can go to Household Hazardous Waste or to any of our collection sites. We've done Love Your Lake, the annual meeting, and Wild Rice Days are places that we've had collection sites. So people really are drawn to loons, but it's really important to protect the loons through responsible behavior on the lake. Having quality water, good environment on our lakeshore so that they can find nesting habitat. You know, as a mom and a lover of nature, I want to look out multiple generations. And so what we do today impacts all the future generations to providing a healthy environment that loons can flourish and that our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will grow up hearing the loons and seeing them like we do.
Well, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this series. We have additional other videos that you can find on our Facebook website. They're all very good about water safety and other aspects of taking care of our lake. You know, the bottom line, folks, is that we're fortunate to be here on Big Sandy Lake, and with that privilege comes good stewardship. And that's really what we're trying to do here, not only with this series on being focused on loons and loon safety, but all the other aspects of being a good steward here for Big Sandy Lake. If you have any further questions or interests, feel free to reach out to any of us, any of the board members. There'll be some information on your screen that you can take down, and of course you can reach us via email on the Facebook website. Thank you.